If this is done to categorize other attacks, especially the Tole massacre and the Lemlam massacre, and intentionally equating the act of a kidnap and the hijack operation, which you had not mentioned boldly, that made me wonder if this is a way of diversion. Then of course it will be extremely dangerous. Let me begin dissecting the video to a detail I can forward. Start of quote. This happened on June 18. On minute 02:30, start of quote. All he was that the passengers and my dad in a minivan traveling like a close by town close to Nakamte. My father lives in Nakamte. He was traveling to a nearby close town around Arjo. End of quote. So what happened was an abduction around Arjo area. So my first inquiry to Miss Hermela Aragawi is, why did you not ask if Arjo was a place of the June 18, 2022 Gregorian calendar Tole massacre, and stress on where exactly was the location of Arjo area in reference to Nakamte or Wallaga as a whole? This is very unprofessional of you, if that is done unintentional, I mean. Then it continues, on minute 02:53, start of quotes, some of them had been shot, end of quote, as told by his brother. On minute 03:53, start of quote, the road has been closed, I think, but on Saturday morning they told him it was open again, end of quote. What I want to inquire, Hailu, is through what means was your hero, humble, brave father contacted to buy fertilizers and told that the shop were open? As I have found in multiple reports that the prosperity-led government-owned Ethio Telecommunication was shut down in terms of network and internet services. This might give us a proof that this attack did not happen near the Tole massacre, where the genocide had happened, rather in an area near Nakamte, where Ethio Telecom was still intact, if that is. Though I don't know the exact geographical area of the Arjo area. The other means for your father to hear this news might be by word of mouth, showing the possibility of a more or less stabilized area, as your father decided to go early in the morning. Thus, Hermela Regawi, once again you're trying to connect a massacre and a kidnap accident that happened over the same day, opting out specific questions of location. Is it of lack of ability or interest? I am not sure. Well, let's continue, Tala. On minute 04:01, start of quote, he got 2 or 3 quintal of fertilizers, which he purchased from Nakamte to get on a public transport before they arrived to the destination. The armed force who stopped them and asked whatever they have, like money, any phones, and all that, and while they were doing this, they were communicating with different people. End of quote. On minute 04:48, start of quote, they attacked a lady, a woman with her child, literally interrogating her, asking a lot of questions. She was not responsive. When he started speaking up, they shifted the target to him, questioning him. Who is he? Asking, how dare you question us? Things escalated so fast, and my dad grabbed one of the men, and he almost took his gun away, but the other 2 people shot him while he was struggling with the other man. End of quote. That means the attackers were in number a minimum of 3. This is your core problem, Hermela Aragawi. Don't pull Halo into an entanglement. On minute 05:29, start of quote, your dad died while trying to defend, I believe you said, a woman and a baby that were being harassed by the people who had guns. That is just an amazing story, you know. Then on the video you can hear Hermela created a gap. This show menace Miss Hermela. She was thinking something that this is the core concept. Check it out on the video. She said, content quote, it appeared that he died on the first attack of Wallaga. I will repeat this because it is the core concept of the whole video. It appeared that he died on the first attack of Wallaga. And there was another one about 2 weeks later that we had heard about. It seems like there are many different attacks, and each one, it was not just this one mass attack. End of quote. What you, Hermela, did is called finding an equivalence and downplaying the Tole massacre and comparing it to a kidnapping and abduction act by whomever, but numbered to be 3 at least. And you saying that there were many places, not just one mass attack, I ask you, Hermela, is a hijack slash abduction slash kidnap act done from a road to Nakamte the same as the massacre perpetrated on the same day, June 18, 2022, Gregorian calendar, which you wanted to take advantage of without poor Hailu knowing? That is so evil of you, for your information, in case you did not know and wonder. Massacre and Amara genocide happened in 10 villages, which are Silso, 164 dead, Charkosa, 106 dead, Bagana, 93 dead, Asosa Surfer, 26 dead, Guthin Surfer, 40 dead, Karakori, 36 dead, Sani, 15 dead, Hayao, 19 dead, Oromoshawa, 14 dead, Tole, 5 dead. There is no Arjo or Kalem Negante here, so I need an explanation until an independent investigation is done, which the Prosperity-led government party blocked the request when inquired from the United Nations organization. I am using data of the AAA, which is our American Association in America. Out of this days toll in the brackets that I had mentioned, these are the only recognized and mostly named, thus identified. Many others were not even lucky to be registered dead, let alone be buried. We will continue. On minute 0614, start of quote, there were many assumptions that were made in the story told by Money, including your father. You just tell the reaction that you got and where there was what you felt to that question mark, and then end of quote. Again, you are trying to create a link here. On minute 0719, start of quote, being human is sufficient, end of quote. As Gabriel is telling you, respect. All reading this so far, all reading or I'm narrating this now, all reading or hearing this so far must know that this is not included in the Tole massacre. Rather, it is an abduction done by some forces. Put some in quotation if you want. On minute 0728, start of quote, I don't think it was about the ethnicity. These people, they were attacking everybody. End of quote. This statement from you, Hailu, is very false, brother. To my defense, they were not attacking everybody. Rather, they attacked a person who could not speak Oromifa. So, if you can read about steps to genocide, the fact that they attacked a non-Oromo speaking human might not change the fact that it's being labeled as a genocide. Or we can label it as ethnic cleansing. So, you can read the United Nations Declaration. I think you were supposedly defending the act to be not root or labeled as genocide once again. This is not the Tole massacre. I'm talking about even the arbitrary kidnapping. I used the arbitrary from your own speech on some part of the video, from the arbitrary kidnapping, and from your statement, some of the people were spared over the favor of a language. That by itself is suggestive of an intent. We will continue. On minute 020813, start of quote, for elderly it is very difficult for whomever it is, end of quote. Once again, you unintentionally glimpse that there is indeed categorization of some sort. I raised this issue, as you will say in the latter interview, that, well, quote unquote, Wallaga is a homogeneous society, end of quote. So I inquired supposedly to hear your thoughts, Hailu. Once again, Hermela trying to connect by saying, on minute 0822, start of quote, there was an assumption that was made in your story that, do we know you said your dad is Oromo, right? And do we know the ethnicity of the woman and the baby your father was protecting, or, and she will continue, end of quote. On minute 0850, start of quote, no, Hailey replied. I don't even know the ethnicity of the woman. What I found out from those who survived, stress on who survived part, that incident is that the woman could not speak up, and they were like they ask everyone, where are you from? What do you do? Because they might ask you, especially if you are a government employee, if you are affiliated with some sort of group, and all such questions. I cannot say she was from this group. She was not able to speak up in Afan or Oromo. That is how they are asking. That doesn't put her in any group. We do have a 90 plus ethnicity. I don't know which group she is. I don't even like to bother finding out. It continues, end of quote. This is a very good answer, but you cannot finalize that she can't be put in a group. Rather, better to say what you said at last part, which is simply, I don't like to bother, which I trust you for. On minute 11:55, start of quote, The people of Walaga are the most suffering, end of quote. On 12 minute 12:09, start of quote, if we start to stand for humans, for utopianism, I think that is what we all have to do, end of quote. I myself buy this idea completely, and I respect you, indeed, brother. On 1710, start of quote, it is everywhere. Sometimes there are just some groups, unemployed youth, will use an advantage and just give themselves a name and start robbing, stop a car, and rob whatever they like. And these people are asking a lot of ransom money. I don't understand how political that is. End of quote. On the last remark, you have again then the downplayed in wanting to create an association of the Tole massacre and the Kidnap Act. You are talking about your pure hurt. From your pure hurt that in just mentioning problems in Walaga. But the bargainer, Harmela, is or might benefit from such statement made as you are unintentionally equating the Tole massacre to a kidnap act that happened to happen at the same very date. You have your dart, Sarah, and is fixed on the hijacking and kidnapping act and the likes, while the real impetus, which were not recognized, is a downplaying of the genocide perpetrated elsewhere, not in the place of Arjo or Nakamte. So, brother, you have been used, sadly, and put the entire, in quotation, Walaga to your understanding of the crisis, which you and me can agree upon. But the other side, does it think so? This is the core concept of the interview. This is why people wait for a few months after a family member died, because the reporter might lead and pave you to say harming and downplaying comments by using his or her tactics. But then again, let me continue on my views and explanation of the interview. On minute 1749, start of quotes, my understanding to government officials and people on the ground. She continues, end of quotes. As a reporter, you should also talk and gather information, whether Hailu's father, a hero, a brave man he was, if the mother and the child whereabouts, and what actually happened to them. But this will cause a diversion of a story, so you try to contain it, as they are irrelevant to the core story, which indeed they are. So shame on you, Miss Hermilla. If you had not asked it unintentionally, but Charlie Hailu tried to mention what happened to the mother and the child by a bit, like pointing it out. So human of you, Hailu, much respect. On minute 18:08, start of quote, you said, who is protecting these communities? End of quote. Why are you forwarding this to Hailu? He's a medical student and a professional page, a busy man who said that he's not into such stuff and politics, and you priorly said you asked government officials, so why bother asking him? But let's hear his perspective. Poor Hailu in unrecognized entanglement. On minute 18:17, start of quote, all I know is a Nakanti, end of quote. This is also a core concept in my view. You can see her video on minute 18:17. This is a bomber and key point. I love the sincerity, Hailu, much love. So if Hermela was doing her job properly, I think you should have known prior to his interview that he is not an outgoing person and does not know much about events occurring outside Nakamti, which is a zone or of a big town in its description. So he can't make any kind of presumption and assumption about the happening besides Nakamti, as he does not indulge and know much about the domain out of this zone. Hermela, let me give you a real example, a real lifetime experience with an example. I had a relative who is a sheikh, and he visited Kombolcha at the time when TPLF was in a march to control areas of Waldia and northern Wallo region. He stayed for 3 weeks and returned to Addis Ababa. And when asked how the trip, how his vacation was, he answered that everything in Wallo, seeing is believing. So he said everything in Wallo is fine. He said that, sir, I was the first out to point that this is utterly wrong by suggesting, have you reached the entirety of the Wallo region to have said this? He replied, no. And after a few weeks, to your knowledge, even Kombolcha was in control of the TPLF. So what he presumptuously suggested by saying Wallo is fine, having visited only Kombolcha area, put the relatives in danger as they could have left the area timely. So you can only say somewhere is fine or bad if you or your trusted sources had been to the area of the whole entirety. I might enjoy a good interrogation time at the federal police headquarters at the Mexico Square and say to people that Mexico is fine if they let me leave after the interrogation. But across the road, if you know the Mexico cafe, might be in fire or in something else. So don't be presumptuous, and especially don't entangle Hailu to these thoughts, as he's clearly in deep sorrow and grief about his hero father. But on minute 1856, Colton code or start of code, I can't really comment. End of code. Abu Yamachi, you are smart, Hailu. You're not yet entangled by her question. On minute 2007, start of code, people from Wallaga are not that much familiar with the other parts of the country. End of code. On minute 2047, start of code, they live in Nakamte. End of code. So, dear Hermel Daragawi, if this is not a diversion tactic plotted by some affiliated group or a prosperity party, I wrote this much hoping it is not. You should change your title of the YouTube program to A Heartbreak in Nakamte or Arjo or on the roads of Wallaga. And don't over-presume Wallaga as a whole, because the plot of the story is entirely around Nakamte. On minute 2050, I have start of quote, I have begged my dad to leave the area for more than 2 years. I begged him because I was terrified for him. End of quote. This is a degree and level of uncertainty we Ethiopians feel these recent years, as it can be anyone's father if this is not to stop. On minute 2109, start of code, I was begging him, but his response was, where am I going to go? End of quote. This is a question raised by many children over care of and for their parents, and these days in various areas, and shows a level of insecurity and a feeling of unsafeness that has tremendously risen. And yes, I feel your pain to some extent, Iru. On minute 21:26, start of quote, I don't think that is an option. All we have as an option is finding a way to settle this madness. End of quote. I fully endorse and support you on this statement. On minute 21:26 up to 23 to 23:30, it was an exceptional speech and fully support, except the last part of the tagging to some degree. On minute 26:55, start of code, if you are going to name, I think there could be possibly targets. Generally, I don't know. On minute 27:12, start of code, this person deserved to live happily for a long time. This should not have happened. End of code. Very true, I could not agree more. On minute 32:31, start of code, on the day my father died, the two people died. End of quote. Once again, much respect, Ailu. If you are, or I was a reporter, I would have asked who else beside your lovely, humble hero father lost his or her life over a protection of a woman and a child. He might have not known, but you, the reporter, scripted that question. So I'm presumptuously guessing either the mother or the child is alive, according to Hailu, because he said earlier that only two people died or was shot. So one is Hailu's father, the other one could be either of the two. So if the child is alive, I know it is not in my place to say this, but if she or he, I mean the child, has no extended family member, I think Hailu can be his or her godfather and possibly take him or her to the States. This is how much Hailu transcendence has come out to me in the interview, but I had to hear it twice. An encore was necessary. The first time I heard the interview, I was a bit fiery, but on the encore part, he truly deserved to be a father of this child. But then again, it's not in my place to say this. But let's continue. The child might have died too, because Hermela, you did not ask the proper follow-up question for me to figure out what actually happened to the mother and the child. On minute 33:09, start of car, you know my problem. I have been detached from the area, especially the past 4 years. I have been in and out. I think interruption, that is when I noticed, because 2 or 3 years been the most critical one. End of quote. So Hermela, you should question Freyot, or the Western Ethiopian Region Discrete Head Office of Ethio Telecommunication, if you are a real reporter, on what actually happened on the network services and internet in Wallagga area. On minute 34:22, start of quote, oh yes, end of quote. This is an answer to the question asked by Hermela, was there a time where it was safer to live there? On minute 34:22, in start of quote, it was so safe, a happy place. That is a memory I had about that. End of quote. On minute 35:27, start of quote, I believe that Wallagga is the most homogeneous area, and ethnic tension would not be, I think, that much of a concern. He continues, end of quote. First, at first, I think this was a political statement and was going to challenge you about it. But in further extension of the explanation, when I anchored the video, you pointed out it seems rather true. I think your definition of homogeneous, in quotation, is a bit like the old, in quotation, good days. But again, if you say this to mask the other ethnicities who moved there and downplay their attack, which I think you are not intended in doing, if that is not the case, you are a pure exceptional person, Hailu. What I want to praise Hermela is for the 36:21 part of the interview. Start of code, the area your father is from is mostly Oromo, Hailu. Yes, that's very necessary and a good follow-up question on your behalf. On minute 36:52 of the interview, start of code, and before that he was living in a remote area. Yes, end of quote. Damn Hermela and the entanglement. But Hailu is very sincere and did not bother to wobble. On minute 37, it's start of quote, it's very close by region, so he took a transport to go to work. This is very close by area. I would say it's part of Nakamte. End of quote. So please do change the title into Nakamte, not Wallagga, dear. Or at least show some hints of Nakamte or Arjo in your title. This is not viewed internationally, though only 10,000 people viewed it when I saw it at first time. But we don't want the foreigners or others who are concerned, who do not know much about the area, to be fooled or mashawad. Or do we, Hermela? 37:09, start of code. Someone is asking if Oromo and Wallaggas are ever discouraged to speak Amharic. End of quote. I respect Hermela on this regard because she tried to raise question pointed by some of her live audience. So kudos to you. On minute 38:25, if we had done this start of quote on minute 38:25, if we had done this interview in Amharic, you would say I'm Amhara. That is what I can say. End of quote. Love the subsequent response from Hermela. She said, very interesting. Interesting indeed. This is very political and you evaded the question. And try other means to label and falsely categorize your presumption. Bro, I know people from Wallagga. It's true that they are discouraged to speak Amharic. I even have a relative through marriage. So, let me answer it for you. You might have said it randomly, but you are insinuating to your listeners that every Amharic speaking people may be regarded as Amhara. So it is indeed very interesting, as pointed out by Hermela in her speech. I want an explanation if you may, because this statement of yours can downplay further claims and allegations when there is an active Amhara genocide, which you chose not to talk about even for a second, which I could understand considering your grief. But such a hasty generalization and labeling with an intent or with not an intent should stop. This is a labeling and tagging done as one of the primary reasons that got us in this chaos and mayhem in the first place. And you have clearly pointed out in the earlier part of the interview. On minute 40:10, start of quote, he stood by his principle even at his last moments. End of quote. I think that is what we all should do. Sorry, this is part of the end of quote. Hailu, I could not have agreed more. Above all, I think Hailu Jufera had a great interview, and it was very informative from your side of the story, from your perspective. And you are very true in saying, quote, start of quote, the stupidity going on Ethiopia took away my dear father. End of quote. And I give my utmost condolences and I have a huge respect for your father indeed. He was a great community leader in Nakamte Wallaga and paid the price of the highest level for the belief he had, and his moral standard is beyond imaginable. So for this, አመሰግናለሁ ኃይሉ. When we come to Hermela, the reporter, the interrogator, I think you should interview Tedros Turfe, the triple A's, the Amara Association America chief chairman, as I have seen that you have wanted to create some connection on events happening on June 18, 2022 Gregorian calendar of the Tole massacre and the Arjo Nakamte kidnapping road accident or kidnapping action, you can say. And please do improve in your follow-up question. By the way, if I wrote this hoping that you may be to a little bit degree sincere and have some hope so if that you are not directed and affiliated by any group, and you should by all means help the displaced Hermela. They need food. Food has not been provided to them sufficiently and they need shelter. Please work on that before the entanglement. This has been written and narrated by Emmanuel Teferi. It was written on July 19, 2022 Gregorian calendar, 3 days after you interviewed Hailo Dufera, and I narrated it on July 21, 2022 Gregorian calendar. I am a 20-something or 24-year-old human. I can say this much. Thank you for listening to me. Hope you have listened to this conversation and if you can give me replies by any means. አመሰግናለሁ።